Hey guys, Terry Carter here. Today I want to share with you a map that shows the location of the ancient homeland of the Giants, Aztlan, the ancient homeland to the Aztecs, to the ancient Egyptians, and to a host of other cultures. Then I want to share with you this map from the 40s that has written on it that this is an archaeological paradise. It's virgin country where no white man has been before. But first I want to tell you some stories about this area so you'll know if you happen to go there, you know what to look for. So in the 1940s, a guy by the name of L.A. Manwaring read a book called Old Civilizations of the New World, and this was published in 1929, and it was written by A. Hyatt Verrill and his wife Ruth Verrill. Now L.A. Manwaring was a collector of Indian artifacts, but his friend had just found something that was pretty perplexing to him. It wasn't of Indian origin. It's what I call out-of-place archaeology, and it excited him, and wanting to know more about it, L.A. Manwaring wrote to A. Hyatt and Ruth Verrill because their book showed out-of-place archaeology things in their book that just wasn't known about. Now, L.A.'s friend, who was in this area that I'm going to show the map to, made the map, made a discovery of some ancient obsidian coins with hieroglyphs on them made in relief. He found these at the bottom of a giant monolithic stone, and after tossing several of the chipped pieces of stone at the base, he discovered a small pyramid of these coins. They were in 3 sizes, but uniform as to the size. They had a diamond merchant in Salt Lake City cut one in half, and he had to use a diamond saw. On the inside, the color was of a black, glassy or volcanic substance, but on the outside, they looked or appeared to be honey-colored, and of a sugar composition and very delicate. The design stood out in bold relief, which gave the appearance of them having been molded or formed, or having been cut out of solid rock, with the characters being left to stand out. Erosion on the elements had affected the outlines of these hieroglyphs on the coins, but they were still pretty prominent. So L.A. Manwaring sent him pictures of these. He had 3 of these. His friend gave him 3 of them, but he didn't want to get rid of them. He wanted to keep all 3 of them. He didn't want to send one away, so he sent pictures. It was hard to get a good picture of these just because back in the 40s they didn't have good photographs, and just the way the stone was, it just didn't turn out very good. The Verrills were pretty fascinated about this, and they did an exhaustive study on these and even made mention of it in their new book that came out called America's Ancient Civilizations that was published in 1953. And on page 54 what they wrote was, finally, at the base of a great monolith east of Johnson Canyon, some miles from Kanab, an amateur archaeologist discovered a number of obsidian discs or coins. They vary from size of dimes to $quarter and bear slightly raised hieroglyphs on both sides. A scientist of the Smithsonian Institute, when shown these coins, stated, "We have never found a coin like these in the United States before, but we have found identical coins in the valley of the Nile near the Egyptian pyramids." And I want to talk about the Egyptians there here in just a minute, but to finish what they wrote, according to Mrs. Verrill, who made a very exhaustive study of the Sumerian archaeological and history, the symbols on the Utah coins are the type found in the Hittite glyphs and in the archaic so-called Sumerian script. The script was employed by the earliest dynasties of Egypt and is also in the pre-dynastic period. Now that's interesting to me because not very far from this place is the Grand Canyon. And in the Phoenix Gazette in, I believe, 1907, 1909, wrote an article about how G.E. Kincaid, while going down the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon, stumbled onto an ancient Egyptian tomb high in the cliffs that was filled with all kinds of Egyptian or Oriental artifacts. And that's interesting to me because I have a friend who found some Egyptian hieroglyphs down in Lake Powell, and Lake Powell was formed by the Colorado River going through the Grand Canyon. Were these Egyptians that had these obsidian coins there near the Kanab area, were they related to the people that was down in the Egyptians that was down in the Grand Canyon? Was there another colony of them down by Lake Powell, where I'm putting together an expedition to try and search and find out more about these Egyptian hieroglyphs that are there at Lake Powell. I already told you in my video last week about my friend Robert Shrewsbury, who's seen giants, who's helping tracking down giants in this area, and about this ball that had hieroglyphs on it that was found in the chest cavity of an ancient giant. In the 1920s, a man by the name of Freddie Crystal came rolling into Kanab, Utah, and he had with him a map that he'd gotten out of Mexico, and this map showed a certain petroglyph, and it also showed 7 mountains that you could see from a certain vantage point. He spent a lot of years looking in all the canyons and looking for these 7 mountains, and he finally found it, and finally found the petroglyph. On his map, it showed stairs climbing up the mountain. He found the stairs climbing up the mountain, so he, along with 2 other people, climbed up the stairs on these mountains, and when they ended, they started digging through the sandstone, and eventually they ran into a type of a mortar. They busted through the mortar and found a tunnel. Freddie Crystal went inside the tunnel and tripped a trigger, and a rock rolled out and pinned his leg. He'd have been stuck there and died except for the 2 people that was with him. They come and rolled the rock off him, and he was able to get out. They decided it was too much trouble for them to do it by themselves, so they enlisted some more people from town to help him. Eventually, after they'd done a lot of digging, finding booby traps, breaking through sealed walls, getting into more tunnels, the whole town, all the men of the whole town was out there helping digging for this. For 2 years they dug on this. What they was looking for was the Aztec treasure. After 2 years of digging, finally Freddie Crystal figured that he'd read the map wrong and that the treasure was in a tunnel below where they'd just thrown all the overburden. He figured that what they'd been digging on was decoy. But now they had 2 years worth of overburden they had to move to get down to it, and that discouraged the townspeople. So the townspeople finally gave up. Freddie dug a little bit more on his own, but finally Freddie Crystal just kind of disappeared. Nobody really knows what happened to him. But in the 1970s, a man by the name of Ray Dillman was looking at the Peralta stone maps, which everybody figures has to deal with the Lost Dutchman mine, the Peralta mines on the Superstition Mountains. Well, after a lot of years of research in this, Ray Dillman, who was legally blind, came to the conclusion that this was a map to the Aztec treasure, and that it led north. Following the Peralta stone maps, the Dillmans landed right on the Judd Ranch. Now, it just so happened that the Judd family had been the original people with Freddie Crystal helping out digging for Montezumas Treasure. So when Ray Dillman came to their doorstep and told them about Montezuma's Treasure was on their property, the Judds were very interested. Ray asked them if there was some certain petroglyphs on their property, and the Judds told them there was.
And his belief was that the treasures that were here in this canyon, whether it was Montezuma or whatever it was located right here on this ranch.
But he had these records with him. They were about 2x2 sheets of paper that he had made all kinds of drawings on. And he asked my mother if there was any of these drawings on the hills around the area. She says, yeah, there's some right there by the house. And one of them was a horse and a man, and it looked like a trail that had been drawn on these papers. And it says, well, down the canyon there should be a big bullseye. And at that bullseye, that's where Montezuma's Treasure is. And then he began to tell the story of why they came to their place. He had spent years and years studying a map, a stone tablet in the Mesa Museum. And everybody believes it's the map to the Lost Dutchman mine. Well, he turned that map upside down and studied it for a number of years and traced and made it a map and followed that map, and it led him right to my folks' place. And on those papers he had stick figures that had crosses in each hand, a cross on the top of their head, and supposedly that represented when Montezuma captured the Spaniards and fled because the Spaniards were trying to steal all their gold. He captured a monk and a black slave. And the monk, in order to keep track of where they went, put these blue writings on the walls, which were represented by the crosses and the cross on the top of his head, to try to find their way back. And so all of that stuff was on these papers. Also on the papers were kind of a stair-step approach. And he says, under this bullseye, you'll find 3 steps. And at the top of the step, you'll find bodies that have been mutilated and left there that Montezuma killed. And you should be able to find the entrance to a tunnel, but the tunnel will be booby-trapped. And you'll need to be careful. And probably the best place to enter the place where they stored the gold is on the first level. Each level will have a tunnel going into it. And so we went down there, and we had a gravel business. And we had a gravel pit right there on the place. And so at night, we take our equipment down there, and we moved all this dirt out, and guess what we found? We found those 3 stairs. And we found the top stair, and we found 3 bodies. And the bodies had been burned. And we go, oh my gosh. Here's a guy that we didn't know, brings us some drawings. We found the stairs, and we found 3 bodies. And they were burned. Half the skeletons were burned.
There were stones placed over the openings. And the first one that we opened up was just chock-a-block full of bones, human bones. The bones had been cannibalized, they'd been eaten.
And then we were digging around, and all of a sudden, it looked like this skull rolled out of the side of the hill and rolled down towards us, and come to find out it was a little pot with 230 turquoise beads in it. We also found at that same location a little nodule. It's about the size of a golf ball, and it has 3 little divots in it. You can set it in your fingers about like this, and it's really, really heavy. You can't scratch it with a file. You can't. In order to find out what kind of material it's made of, you'd have to destroy it, and we didn't want to do that because it's an artifact. But we figured, and we've had a lot of people look at it, that it was probably hardened gold. We decided it wasn't in that location, so we moved a little bit to the north, about 100 feet, and we moved a bunch of overburden, and as we came down the ledge, lo and behold, we found the blue writing. The stick figure, the guy holding 2 crosses in his hand and a cross on the top of his head, there it was. And we dug down, and we found ruins, granaries, and then this really weird writing that we've never seen before in this area. It's really dug in deep into the rock, and it's weird writing, not something that you would normally see around here, and that was all over the wall. And about 2 days later, after we took that material down off the wall and opened that up, that blue writing disappeared. The air made it evaporate. Luckily, we have some pictures of it.
Down in there is where we found the little basket. There's a little woven basket that's there at the Heritage House. And in that basket was the bag that had the hair in it. And that's also where we found the piece of fabric. And they were clear down in the back, buried way back in there.
We found some artifacts. In fact, we found a net with a fisherman's knot in it, which they'd never ever found in this area, that held hair from goats or sheep or something. The hair was still there, but these fisherman knot basket, which was really, really crazy to find in this area, we found in that hole.
They also found what the Dillmans called the 5th tablet, another tablet that verified to Ray Dillman that he followed the map right. Well, this 5th tablet had ancient writings on it. I don't know if it had to deal with the other Peralta tablets or not, but they definitely found another tablet with ancient writings on it. There was a misunderstanding between the Judds and the Dillmans, and the Judds ordered the Dillmans to leave their property and to never return. And so that was the end of that saga about finding the Aztec treasure there. And I think it was 2005 we heard about the Dillmans and the grandson of Ray Dillman, Dan Dillman, who had some information from his grandfather about some giants who had found one of these metal balls in the chest cavity and the fifth Peralta stone that we was interested. So we hopped a private jet, flew out there and met with Dan Dillman, and found out he was making a documentary about his grandfather and what happened there on the Judd Ranch. Dan said he would give me an interview, so I've been so busy with work I haven't been able to do anything, but I'll have to get with him and get that full story about what happened with his grandfather there on the Judd Ranch and what they found and what they was looking for. There has been giants said to have been found in this canyon with the metal balls in the chests. There's been ancient inscriptions found. The ones I told you about last week under that cairn, that rock cairn that formed with the stone box underneath it that had the inscription on the lid. The ancient obsidian coins with the hieroglyphs in relief on them. All which makes this area an interesting area. So here is the map that I got my hands on accidentally with the letters from L.A. Manwaring to the Verrills. You can see it shows exactly where this place is at. If you go exploring this area, remember not to destroy any archaeological finds. You could probably get with one of the locals out there and go and see the old ancient tunnels that the townspeople of Kanab and Freddie Crystal uncovered. There's a lot of great petroglyphs out there, and if you happen to find anything out-of-place archaeology, leave it there, get with me, let's get some archaeologists out there, let's document it, verify it, and get it released to the public so the public knows what this is. And with that said, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, like I said, I don't know if YouTube likes it or not, but it makes me feel good. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. And hit the bell so you get notified. And with that said, that's a wrap.